Good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar on an introduction to internal auditing with myself, James Wright, a consultant for DG Legal. For those of you who haven't joined our webinars before, the slides from today's presentation will be sent to you tomorrow and a recording of the webinar will be available for 3 months. So if we do run over in time and you need to leave, you'll be able to watch the rest at another time. We're in webinar mode at the moment, so you can't see or hear, or I can't see or hear any of you. So please use the Q&A function so that I can answer any questions when we get to the end. So just an introduction to myself. My career in legal finance spans over 25 years, working in law firms of all shapes and sizes. My knowledge and experience in understanding the SRA Accounts Rules has enabled me to provide extensive support to the COFA and build processes and procedures to enable compliance, with outstanding results in the annual SRA Accounts Rules audits. I've been a tutor for the Institute of Legal Finance and Management, and I've also written a number of practice and guidance notes, both internally and for external clients and legal software providers. I'm co-founder of Blue Sky Legal Finance and Management Solutions, providing training, coaching, and recruitment on all things legal finance, and we also provide outsourced file reviews. So thank you for joining our bite-sized management training session, where we'll look at internal auditing. During this session, we will look at the purposes and benefits of auditing, the file selection process, and which areas to focus on more so than others. We'll also look at who should complete the file review and the tools that you could use to help you get most out of the results following the auditing process. We will also look at how to deliver constructive feedback to change future behaviour. Finally, you'll be pleased to know that the training sessions will last no more than 20 to 25 minutes to ensure there is time at the end to answer any questions that you may have from today's session. Finally, firms will already be doing some peer-to-peer file reviews, so this session will be more focused on file auditing from a finance perspective. Some firms are already doing this, but others will not. So hopefully I can provide you with some insight during this session. Before I continue, I would like to launch a poll just to get an idea of how you feel people would react to the thought of more file reviews. So just bear with me a second while I launch the poll. So if you could just take a few moments to read that question, please, and then answer appropriately, that would be good. Just give it a moment. Okay, so just going to share the results with you. So how do you feel as when finance teams would respond to more file reviews? Looks like we've got an almost equal split between people abandoning ship and running for the hills and being competent and making sure that everything is in order. So that's that question's good. And then I can see that the majority have said which types of work types would you concentrate on your file reviews. So you've said that conveyancing and private client matters are an area that you would focus more on. So thank you for that. So what's the purpose of internal auditing? File reviews should be seen as an ongoing compliance check, not just a tick box exercise. It will help raise your standards in the business and be a proactive step towards reducing risk. The main purpose is to check compliance with the SRA Accounts Rules. but it could also help you identify areas where additional training is needed. It could highlight patterns of any failures in processes. So the benefit being that you can use the outcomes as a way of making improvements. It can help manage risk, as file reviews could identify at an early stage that something isn't working, making auditing a powerful financial control. It's important to note that you should also speak to your COP just to ensure that there's no duplication or crossover on what the peer-to-peer or other file reviews that are being checked throughout the business. But you want to make sure that your focus is more based around the financial transactions. The idea of file auditing is to follow much the same steps that your reporting to accountants would review during their annual audit. So how do you select files? You should use a system-based report to sort by department and fee earner. This will identify the number of each files that each fee earner has. So this in itself could be a telling sign. You should also use your breach register to highlight fee earners or departments with a larger number of breaches. Do the breaches follow a pattern in the types of errors or the same person making the same breaches? And there you go. Potentially you've got a list there of who you would target towards your auditing. Do you have any fee earners who you have concerns over, where you feel that they may have a lack of understanding of the rules or compliance, or perhaps they have a number of aged client balances that you feel that this would be a good time to review? You could randomly select files just by selecting matters from the list or selecting block matters from that list. You should complete the audits on a frequent basis and avoid doing them once or twice a year. They're much more manageable than being completed frequently and not seen as a huge task if they're completed once or twice a year. It's also too important not to forget the benefit and value of potentially identifying an area of risk or failure that would enable you to deal with these issues sooner rather than later. You should document why you've chosen one route or another. So how many files should you review? In some firms, not all fee earners will have conduct of a file. They will merely be assisting the fee earner responsible for conduct of the matter. So you should still see their behaviour during the audit process. For high-risk areas, complete more file reviews, such as conveyancing and private client, which you identified in the recent poll. As a pointer, CQS guidance suggests that a minimum of 3 property files per quarter should be reviewed for all fee earners. Still review files from lower risk areas, such as employment. Remember to audit every fee earner at least once a year. For example, do all of your employment matters follow the same path? Or are you just providing legal advice and receiving payment of costs? If so, then there's just a small number of files per fee earner per year. If you receive settlement monies on employment matters, then review these matters, which you know that you've had settlement monies passing through your client account. Home workers should be included. With COVID, lots of firms went from fully on-site office-based working to fully remote working. You need to check that your processes work for those who are working remotely, because potentially with them being fully remote or part home, part office, perhaps your procedures don't actually match those type of working practices. You should also consider the experience of the fee earner. New starters, make sure that you do more file reviews for those just to verify that they are following the processes. Consider external consultants or locums. They don't always know the processes of the firm if they are only with you for the short-term basis. Make sure that your onboarding of new matters covers everything. Make sure that your onboarding of new starters covers everything. A robust onboarding process can save you a lot of time in the long run. So who should complete the file reviews? This depends on the firm's setup. Larger firms will obviously have more choice than smaller firms. It should be someone in the finance or audit team with an understanding of the accounts rules and other regulations. They should know what to look for and how to spot when something is incorrect. Ideally, it wouldn't be someone who is involved with the day-to-day postings. You need the audit to be looked at as independently as possible. Checking some of your own work might mean it's not checked as thoroughly as it should be. If your COFA sits outside of the day-to-day transactions, then they would be the ideal person to continue doing the reviews. So how to deliver feedback? This is all about balance. You've taken the time to review the files and gather the results. This is a critical stage and where the value of the reviews can be seen. Let's say that during the file reviews, you've identified a process issue which has affected a large number of files that you've audited, which might then result in a self-report to the SRA. The sooner you identify the issue, the sooner it will be resolved. You need to support an open door culture to allow people not to be afraid of reporting an issue for fear of consequence. Promote transparency and learning from prior mistakes. If during your audit you identify one fee earner or a team has failed, then feedback to that person or team in a constructive manner. What do they need to do to ensure compliance going forward? It could be that during your audit you identify a failure in one or more of your processes. Is it because people aren't following the process properly, or does the process not work, therefore needing a review and a change? When this is the case, effectively communicate across the firm so that everyone is made aware of the changes and what they can follow. It is a simple change, then this can be conveyed by email to all, or is it a more in-depth change which requires face-to-face training session? Explain what went wrong and what's changing. Remember to share the positives as well as the negatives. So if you find no issues, then gold stars should be passed on to everyone. So how might you be able to record the results and benefit the most out of your file reviews? You need to ensure that you follow the same process when completing the audit reviews. So have a checklist to measure that you are following the same process and checking the same elements for each file. You could look at having a bespoke process written for your exact needs. You could also consider outsourcing your file reviews. So as I mentioned, outside of DG Legal, I'm co-founder of Blue Sky Legal Finance and Management Solutions, and I've got quite extensive experience of reviewing files. You could also create your own forms using a form builder, such as a type forms or similar product. You could create an Excel spreadsheet to record the outcomes of file reviews, allowing you to then filter on data to home in on the areas of concern. I thought it would be useful during this session for me to share some of the issues that I've identified during the file audits that I've completed in the past. One situation was where payments were being made against funds which were not actually received into client account. A firm hadn't properly considered the payment processing time when taking card payments from clients. They were taking the card payments right up to the completion day on conveyancing matters. They would take the payment over the phone and act as if the funds were received into client account, when in fact it takes approximately 3 working days for the funds before they would be received into your client account. Therefore, 3 days before you could use those funds and pay out on them. So they were effectively using other clients' money to complete those matters. Another situation, and sometimes a common issue, is where firms take costs before the invoice has been sent to the client. Rule 4.3 of the SRA Accounts Rules requires you to give a bill of costs or other written notification to the client or paying party before you transfer any money from client account. If your firm's policy is to assume that all bills are sent to clients within 24 hours of them being processed, how is this being monitored? So a classic is where a fee earner had requested a final invoice and check to the client at the end of the matter. Both the invoice and check were processed by the finance team and passed back to the fee earner. 2 days later, office monies were taken from client's account to pay that outstanding invoice. The day after, the fee earner comes back to the finance team and says that they've noticed an error on the bill and therefore it needs to be amended. But actually you've breached the rules because you haven't already submitted the bill to the client before taking the funds. I've also seen a file being closed and archived where the check due to the client is still being held on the client's paper file. So it's never actually sent to the client in the post. So potentially that would be an issue that would take some time for you to identify. Typically, you might see that the check hasn't been cashed after several months because it would still be showing you in your unreconciled items. But like I say, this could take a number of months before it's identified by the finance team. Another scenario situation that I've seen is where client to office transfers have been made to the outside of the firm's agreed number of days. In this case, the firm had set a 14 days rule in which they would transfer money from client to office account after the invoice had been sent to the client. But in some cases, it was over 20 days before the office money was being taken from client account. This meant a more vigorous check of the client to office report to ensure the invoices were be paid from client account within 14 days. But it's highly likely that without file reviews, any of these issues would have been spotted. So therefore, it's important to make sure that you're identifying from a file perspective that you're following the rules and regulations. So you'll be glad to know, sit tight, we're almost at the finish line. Hopefully you all feeling like the guy who's in midair, look as if he's about to do a face plank on the floor, but rather than face planking, it's actually a somersault. And just to leave you with a thought for today, you can't change what you don't know, but once you do know, you cannot help but change. So I'm just going to have a look now to see if there's any questions, so just bear with me a moment. So I can't see that there's any questions there. So thank you for your time, and hopefully I've been able to enlighten you further on our file auditing. Thank you.